I'm so glad you could join me tonight for Tune In Tuesday. I'm really excited to show you these projects. I love the Favorite Flowers Designer Series paper, and I know you will as well. It's a sale-a-bration selection. Now, this class is entirely free. You're watching it right now and didn't have to pay admission. But if you would like a class kit that will allow you to create one of each of the 3 projects I'm showing tonight, then simply place an order of $35 or more in my online store using the host code, and you can find that link in the description of this video. Remember, we're in sale-a-bration, so if your order is $50 or more, you will also be able to select a sale-a-bration item at checkout. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me, stamperhood@gmail.com. Let's get started. I knew very early on when I saw this gorgeous Favorite Flowers Designer Series paper in the sale-a-bration catalog that I wanted to create a covered notebook with a magnetic closure for you. I recently was shown how to do this by one of my team members, and so I wanted to pass it along. You will need 1 sheet of Designer Series paper. You will need 1 sheet of 12 by 12 cardstock. This is black. We no longer sell packages of black, but it went perfectly with this paper, so I got a couple packages before it retired just a couple weeks ago. You can buy 12 by 12 in assorted colors by color family. You will also need some coordinating cardstock, and I'm just using 8.5 by 11 here, and you need about 1.5 sheets. So let's begin by making the notepad cover itself, the bones of it, if you will. You'll need to bring in a paper trimmer, and we're going to cut off a 1-inch strip. So this 1 by 12 inch strip is going to be used in our project to make this a refillable notepad cover. From the remaining piece, you want to cut this at 8 1/8 inch. So you need an 8 1/8 inch by 12 inch piece. So 1/8 of an inch is 2 tick marks past the 8 here. You can set this aside and use it as part of your magnetic elements. Now for this 8 1/8 by 12 inch piece, you're going to turn it so that the long edge is against your base, whether you use it like I do or you turn it around and put this at the top. You want to use your scoring blade now and score at 4 1/4, 4 1/2, 9 9/16. Now 9 9/16 is just 1 tick mark after the 9 1/2. So go to 9 1/2 and then go 1 tick mark over. And that's where you're going to score. And then you're going to score at 9 13/16, which is 1 tick mark after 9 3/4. So 9 3/4 plus a tick mark right there. All right, we're going to set our cutter aside. Now what we'll do is we are going to fold and burnish on these score lines. There's 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I folded. Now I want to go back, and with my bone folder, I want to burnish them so that I have nice crisp lines that will allow everything to lay the way it's supposed to. And so you can have your notepad open whichever way you want. I'm going to have it so that this larger front flap closes first and then this smaller one goes over here. We'll get to that later. Let's set this aside. Now we want to work on cutting our Designer Series paper. Let's bring our cutter back. And we are going to cut at, let's see, the 7 3/4 inch mark. Let me open this back up. 7 3/4. We're going to set this piece aside. Now that we have 7 3/4 by 12, and by the way, if you had been using directional paper, you want to make sure that you had the had it on its side. So this is non-directional paper, which is the easiest to work with. But let's say this was the top. This was like let's say there were a bunch of birds and the birds' heads were up here and the feet were down here all over the paper. You'd want to turn it on its side before you cut it so that you're cutting sideways, because this is really how it's going to go on the front of the notepad holder. So now we have this 7 3/4 inch width. We are going to cut this at 4 5/8. And you could actually make this a little bit bigger than 4 5/8. You could make it 4 and 1 tick mark after to accommodate some adjustments that we've made, but this will work fine. 4 5/8, which is just 2 tick marks after the 4 1/2. And then you're going to cut the next one at 3 7/8, which is 2 tick marks before the 4-inch mark. And then you're going to cut a piece that is 1 7/8 inch. So that's 2 tick marks before 2 inches. And you don't need this right now. So there are our decorative cover elements. Let's set that aside. Let's bring in our 8 1/2 by 11 sheet of coordinating cardstock. In this case, I am using Calypso Coral. We are starting with this full sheet, and we're going to cut at 7 7/8 on the short side. So my end result needs to be 7 7/8 by 11. So 7 7/8 is 2 tick marks before the 8-inch mark. I'm just cutting off this little piece, and I don't need this. And now, just as we did with the black, we are going to turn this on its side, and we're going to cut at 4 3/4. We're going to cut at 4. And we're going to cut at 2. And just a little bit of waste here. So let's go ahead and bring in everything that we've cut so far and assemble. These two pieces will get glued together and then put on this left-hand piece. These middle-sized pieces will get glued together and put on this right-hand piece on the front. And then these two pieces will get glued together and go to the back. So now I'm going to speed this up so that you don't have to watch me applying the glue in real time. There, and now this is the basics of our cover. This is a junior legal pad, and I happen to get these at a big box store and you can get them on Amazon, you can get Walmart, wherever. You're going to bring in your piece that measured 1 by 12 of the base cardstock. Oh, before you do that, we really need to cover this ugliness. It's not that it's totally ugly, it's just not attractive because it's got this logo on it. So let's cover that up. So we are going to need a piece of that designer series paper that measures, now this measures I think 5 by 8. Let's see, at 8, and yes, 5 by 8. So we will need a piece that is 5 inches wide, and then to cover this part over here, it's about 2.5 inches. I'm going to take this piece that we had left over, cut it at 5, and then turn it and cut it at 2.5. And we want to attach it to the front here. I think it's just as easy to attach on the front with tear and tape. So we'll do that. We'll just align this carefully up to the bottom. Stick it down, and we're just gonna fold it over with our fingers. Maybe crease the top a little bit, give it a little bit more of a finished look. And then we can go ahead and just glue it to the back. Why am I not using sticky strip? No particular reason other than this side is not going to show, and the glue will adhere just fine to this cardboard. I was a little worried about the front because it has a little bit of a different feel to it, so the glue would probably take longer to dry on the front. So there we go. Pretty little cover right there. You're going to take this 1 inch by 12 strip and insert it between the last page of notes and the cardboard backing, and slide this up as far as it'll go, and you're going to fold it over, and you don't have to make it super tight because we want our notepad to be able to slide in and out. I'm going to use sticky strip here. You could use glue on this particular part. However, I'm using sticky strip because when I've used glue, sometimes I get a little heavy-handed with my glue and it seeps out and then it gets all over the notepad and then this sticks to the notepad, and you don't want that. You want to be able to remove the notepad from the notepad cover, and you can't if they're stuck together. And just put that over there. All right. Now we're going to adhere some sticky, not sticky strip, tear and tape. Sorry. We used to carry sticky strip. For those of you who remember back then, we also called it red liner tape, and that red liner stuck to your hands like nobody's business. So you're trying to remove it, especially in the winter, and it would just stick and you couldn't get rid of it. So this is much better. It doesn't stick at all. Oops. Okay. So let's bring our cover back in. Now I didn't show you to begin with. Maybe I'll go back and see if I can edit and find a different spot. We want to fit this in here nice right up against this edge. So when you have made this black piece to begin with, just make sure it wraps nicely the way it should around this notepad. There is just enough room at the top and bottom, just a squeak, really. So you don't want it to go right up to the top. You want to leave just a little bit of space. You want to make sure that goes right over here and there. So now it's in there straight. I can close my cover nicely. It doesn't stay closed. That's what the magnetic closure is going to be for. But there, we have that stuck down. And now when this pad is empty, all you have to do is remove it and slide the next one in here. Genius, right? So my my downline makes these and sells them at craft fairs, and she says they're a big hit. All right, so that is it. All we need now is the magnetic closure. I am going to use an old retired set of layering circles. There is a current set of layering circles that you can get to work for this project, but the directions that I will provide for those of you who get the Class to Go kit have directions for rectangular pieces. The sizes can vary. The only things you need to keep aware of is that for this front piece, it needs to be larger than, whoops, that doesn't belong there, this inside piece. And on this front piece, there is a backing circle that's not scalloped. You can see on this side, it's not scalloped. that is slightly smaller than this front Calypso coral piece, and that just gives it a nice finished look. You can have two that are the exact same, but you have to take the care to line them up. I'm a little bit lazier, so I'm okay if it's just shy of perfect. But if I am cutting rectangles, I found that I can be just slightly off, and you don't want your back piece to be larger than your front piece. I'm going to not, as you can see with this one, I stamped a saying and embossed it in white powder, and this is from the In the Moment stamp set. I thought this was great because if I'm using this notebook as a to-do list, I can remind myself that sometimes the most productive thing I can do is relax. So I'll just make notes about what I can do later. Close it, and then I got it out of my mind so I can rest in peace and relax in peace. I'm going to cut a larger layer from this piece of Calypso coral. I'm going to cut this piece where I'm going to stamp and emboss on from this leftover basic black. For the inside layer on this flap, I'm going to take a piece that is just slightly smaller. That's not the one, it's this one over here. This is just slightly smaller. It's the closest one I can get and still be smaller. And this is going to be what comprises the front closure elements. I've gone ahead and cut circular shapes for my magnetic closure elements. You could use something like the Something Fancy dies, where you get creative with these three shapes. The outer two would work for the outside closure. The inner two would work together for the inside closure. It's a little bit trickier because there's shapes that you want to line up and get straight, which is one reason I like circles. I also like circles because it's different than the shape of the notebook itself. So I've cut these pieces. This would be what element A is. It's the largest piece that you're going to be working with. It is the backing for the front closure. Element B is slightly smaller than element A, and this is going to be what goes on the inside to cover up the magnet. Element C is the backing for the inside piece. And then element D, which is in my directions that I'll send with those of you who get the class to go, this is what is cut from the designer series papers. It's in the designer series paper section with a note that you can cut it from cardstock. And I chose to cut it from cardstock because I wanted to stamp, and that goes on the front. And then this little piece, that's going to go on the inside layer. There we go. All right, let's go ahead and start assembling. Here we have our elements arranged in order, A, B, C, D, and E. If you're going to use a piece of cardstock so that you can stamp on it for the front closure, that's element D, and you'll want to stamp that now. Otherwise, if you're using designer series paper, this is a designer series paper element, and you can just attach A and D together. But I'm going to stamp and emboss. Be right back. Okay, I've got this embossed. I'm going to apply some adhesive all over the back of this. Don't get it too close to the edge. You don't want it to eke out. And we'll center that on the other scallop. And the liquid glue allows you to position it and play with it until you get it just so. All right, so we have that together. I'm gonna bring in our notepad. Now, what we want to kind of dry fit this first, which simply means Before you glue anything, make sure everything is the way you want it. So if I were to put this black circle right here against the left edge, where would I want to cover this circle? This circle would want to go right here, which is perfect because it looks like the half of this is right over, you know, it's cut in half right along this line. I'm gonna go ahead and glue that half. All right, that looks pretty good. I might even be cheating it over to the center a little bit, because that puts this element a little bit more in the center, but it doesn't matter. You can, you know, if you want it perfectly centered, you can start with this over closer to the center and move it over. It does need to be attached to this piece though. Now we're going to bring in some magnets. With this flap open, we're going to adhere a magnet right here using a glue dot. So you can pick up these thin magnets. I picked up these online. You can just do a search for them, Amazon, wherever. And this is, I don't know, quite a few, 50 or 100, something like that. They're very thin. They're 5/8 of an inch in diameter and 1/32 of an inch deep. I need to take 2 off, and the directions will tell you. They don't actually come with directions, but online it said you're going to slide them off because that's the easiest way to get them off. And I want to slide 2 off. Well, I got 1. I'm going to slide 1 more off. Okay. Put these back and put them away. All right. I'm going to bring in a glue dot and take one of my magnets, put it on there, and affix it right here, about in the center of the circle. It's okay if it overlaps this piece a little bit, doesn't matter. All right. If you want to push it off, makes it a little bit more flat, that's fine too, even if it's not completely centered, as long as it's mostly centered. We're going to take element B and cover that up so that it looks pretty. Go ahead and take some glue. If you want to glue this piece because you know the dimensions, that's fine. You don't need any in the center where the magnet is. You're just going to adhere that over the top. And so now you now have a nice, pretty finished look. If you had wanted some sort of image on the inside here, you could. We're going to pretend that my battery did not die while recording this and finish the project. Ignore this piece right here. We just left off having put this piece on. You could write an inscription here. You could die cut a piece of designer series paper to go over here to decorate it. You could have stamped it, whatever you wanted to do, written the name of the person that you were going to give it to, whatever. Next, you're going to take your remaining magnet and set it on here. Now, if it doesn't want to stick to the top of the magnet that's already in here, hidden in here, then that means you need to flip the magnet over. Because if the poles are opposite, you want the poles to be opposite, because if they're the same, they will repel. So if it's sliding around and not wanting to stay on the center, sometimes they just shoot right off, then you just flip it over. It'll snap right into place. You will add a glue dot to the back of the magnet. Add your element, this was C, I'll add element C right over the top. I like to center it. So now your magnet and your black piece are adhered together. You will put adhesive on the back of this piece, and then you will, remember these two are stuck together so I don't have to be so careful. Then you will fold it over. You'll press down, that will get the glue to adhere this black piece right there. Once the black piece is adhered, the magnet should be on it still, by the way, because the glue dot should be holding it stronger than this magnet over here. If it is not, simply maneuver the magnet over. But in the times that I've done it, the magnet has shown up right here. Apply some adhesive around this outer rim. Add this right here over the top of the magnet. Let it set up, and then your notebook closes magnetically. For our sticky note holder, we're going to need a piece of cardstock that measures 3 1/8 by 8 inches long. Now this is to accommodate sticky note pads that are 3 by 3. I don't like to use a full sticky pad because they're quite thick, and when you get down to just a few sheets left, there's a lot of room to swim in the holder. So I think splitting it in half, and I just sort of eyeball it, still gives you a good number of sheets and just makes this a little bit thinner and more manageable, especially when it gets lower. We're going to take our piece of cardstock and we're going to score at 1.5 inches, 1 3/4 inches. I know some of you are probably hearing my cat right now. He wants in and I don't want him in. 4 3/4. So 1.5, 1 3/4, 4 3/4, and then 5. You're going to fold and burnish on all of those lines. And it should lay right over onto itself, which is what you want. You want all your score lines straight. All right, so there is the basic part of our notepad cover. Now you can shape this end if you want to. I'm not going to. This is going to go on the inside, and the reason why we made it 3 1/8 inches is just so it's stuck over a little bit from the notepad. We don't want that notepad showing, even though it was pretty close and hidden mostly. I could still see a little bit of yellow peeking out. So this just makes sure that we're good to go. You'll need some designer series paper pieces as well. You'll need 2 that measure 2 3/4 by 2 7/8. So they're almost square, but not quite. Because this is wider than 3, we need the 2 7/8 inch piece right here. We'll glue that on. We'll glue all the pieces on. Just deciding whether or not I want to hide the magnets. I don't think I need to hide all the magnets here. I'll hide one. Let's see. Here we go. And then we can take that out of here. We'll put one on the back here as well. You should be seeing about the same border all around, all the way around. The liquid glue allows you to play with it just a little bit to get it right where you want it. That's good right there. And then this last little flapper right here. All right. how to put this inside. You can just stick it down, but I like to glue it down. It just holds it a little bit better. Especially if you are someone who's going to put this in your purse. I find that, you know, there's all sorts of goop hanging around in your purse, some dust and dirt, and that tends to make things less sticky that are supposed to be sticky. So we'll just let that set up. I've centered it left and right in there. You see just a little bit of black peeking. So now we need our closing mechanisms. Let's see what we've got. I went ahead and I embossed just a note because I loved the look on my notepad cover. I want one on my Post-it cover too. And so I embossed just a note, and that sentiment came from the Conversation Bubbles stamp set, which is right here. So I used the just a note, and I used my layering circles again. And I wanted enough of this purple to show. Now, fresh freesia would go nicely, but it also coordinates with Highland Heather as well. You could use, you could go ahead and use the Blackberry Bliss that coordinates, but I thought that was a little too close to the black. So I wanted something with a little bit more pop of color. I'm going to adhere that to my scalloped circle. And that's gonna go right here. Just want to put, it's not even a half that's up here, it's a little bit less than half. Make sure my words are straight. All right, oop, I got a little bit of glue eking out here. I was a little heavy-handed. I knew it when I put it on. We'll let that dry and then we'll remove it with our little eraser here. We used to sell these, but you can get them at the dollar store now, or you can get them online. All right, now we need our closing mechanisms. We need our magnets. Take a magnet. The magnet I've included in the to-go kit is half the size, well, half the size in diameter. This is a 1/2 inch, and the ones for the notepad are 1/4 inch. You're going to add a glue dot. Let's see, here's one right here. Just what we did to the center of the other notepad. I'll put that right there. And we're going to take another piece of cardstock, and this would be circle C. And it can be the same color as your coordinating cardstock, so it could be this Highland Heather as well, or you can go ahead and make it black as I did. I kind of like just seeing the little purple edge as opposed to a big piece of purple right here. I just want to make sure that that's stuck down well, and because your magnet will be smaller, it will be easier to stick down. And then we're going to add this second magnet, however it wants to go. All right, there we go. And add another piece or another a glue dot to our project. And we will close it. And there we go. That glue dot is enough to hold it. To create our decorative pen, we're going to start with Pentel RSVP pens. And this one's a fine point, but doesn't matter. You can take the cover off, and then you're going to unscrew this barrel part that has the ink. So you take it out of the barrel. We are going to take a piece of coordinating designer series paper, and I've just used a scrap from the notebook that we created earlier. Take your bone folder. Now you have to have a little bit of a cushy surface. So this happens to be a mouse pad type surface, but if you didn't have that, you could use this mat, and you're just going to rub this, and you can see what's happening. As I'm rubbing it on here, it's starting to curl. You're breaking down some of the fibers. You're just training it how you want it to go. And that'll make it easier to begin to wrap around this ink barrel. So you wrap it pretty tightly. Wrap it pretty tightly, and then you're going to insert it. Keep it wrapped as far as you can in here. You're going to insert it in there. And if it doesn't quite go to the end, which this one didn't, I will usually take this end of the pen and just sort of push it down. And then it goes down to the end. You can put this back in, screw it up, and now you have got a pen that coordinates nicely with your covered notepad. Thank you once again for joining me tonight. I hope you've enjoyed these projects as much as I have enjoyed bringing them to you. Remember, if you want the class kit, you need to place an order using the host code. The link is in the description of this video. If you have any questions, reach out. Have a great rest of your week.